Check 1, 2. All right. Good morning. Good morning, Royal We Fellowship. I'm so happy to be here with you this morning. And I apologize. We were out last week. We were having some technical difficulties. I've had to redo my whole internet system and rewire things. It had been a year since I've done it. Things were starting to short out. So on and on and on. But we are here. We are up and going. And things are running smoother than they were before. So I'm very thankful for that. And I'm thankful to be here with you this morning. We are going to revisit Exodus chapter 1. This is what we attempted to do last week. And it's such an important and powerful message as it pertains to narcissistic abuse in this world that it's worth doing it again. For those of you who were here the week before last week, you know that we tried to do Exodus 1, but it was very choppy. That was the beginning stages of the degradation of our internet situation here. So it didn't come across effective, and it was very choppy. So now that we have that all worked out, let's get into Exodus 1. As we move away from Genesis, let's get into Exodus 1 and do it right, shall we? Let's go ahead and open up in prayer as we are inviting people into Royal We Fellowship this morning. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for who you are in our lives and how you're leading us and helping us to navigate and taking us through this world, Father God, where we are sojourners, where we are visitors. You are our protection. You are our guide. Open our eyes to be able to see around us. Open our ears to be able to hear around us as you navigate us, as you lead us to where you need us to be, for prosperity, for purpose, and for peace. And everybody says, amen. All right, so as I said earlier, we're going to revisit Exodus. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Now, up to this point, throughout Genesis, what we have seen is an introduction, if you will, into narcissism, the world of narcissistic people, the world of narcissistic abuse. And we have seen how God has dealt with people on an individual level. Now, we've seen the extent of narcissism within family dynamics, have we not? In the beginning, God asked Abraham to leave his family. Why? Why did God call Abraham away from his family, away from his town, in order to follow God's instruction so that God can make Abraham a father of many nations? Why did he need to leave his family? Well, to get rid of the narcissism, to leave behind the shallowness, to leave behind the trap, if you will. And narcissism is a trap. Whether you're trapped with family, whether you're trapped with friends, whether you're trapped in a bad marriage, you are trapped. And narcissism has a way of making you ineffective to be used by God. So in order for Abraham to be a father of many nations, he had to first leave his family, his father, his mother, his brothers, his sisters. God called him out of there. And as a matter of fact, God said, don't bring anybody with you from that town. Leave all of that narcissism there. And obviously, Abraham didn't quite listen, brought his nephew Lot, or rather his nephew Lot caught up with him. But anyway, so we've seen up to this point the family dynamic and how narcissism can exist. Then we also saw in the story of Jacob and his brother Esau. And then we saw an extreme amount of narcissism from Rachel and Leah's father, Laban. Laban had that narcissistic attitude of everything is mine. When Jacob worked 7 hard years for one daughter and then 7 hard years for his other daughter, total 14 years in order to make Laban rich and wealthy, he earned the right to marry his daughters. Those daughters became Jacob's, but not to Laban. Laban still believed that they were his property. This is a very damaging and a very vicious narcissistic mentality that people are property. Laban chased down Jacob to try to kill him, to take his daughters back after giving them away in marriage. So up to this point, we've seen this narcissism, this crazy narcissistic view in this world in smaller dynamics, right? Family situations. Today, what we're going to see and what we're going to pay attention to is as the story of the Bible opens up and as we progress, we're going to see narcissism taking place on larger scales now. We're going to see it not only within family dynamics competing and having the it's mine attitude, that selfishness. We're going to see entire nations fall into this category. And this is important for us because we live in a world today where we are seeing this happening all around us. Nations with the it's mine and we have to do it this way. And as a matter of fact, this is how wars start. This is how even civil wars within nations start. How many of you are opening your eyes to the reality of this, the it's mine attitude? This is the way we need to do things attitude. This is highly, highly soaked in narcissism. And we're going to see the beginning of this in the beginning of Exodus, the first chapter. So just to set the stage of where we are in Exodus, for those of you who followed along, I'm going to give you a brief recap. Joseph, who was one of the sons of Jacob, was ousted by his brothers, right? He was thrown away. He was discarded by the narcissistic brothers because Joseph had visions. He had promise. He had the sparkle in his eye as a young boy. His brothers said, in a narcissistic fit of rage, we got to get rid of him. He threatens our way of doing things, right? They got rid of him. Joseph, as a young boy, ended up in Egypt as a slave who rose to power because God was with him. And he rose to power. He became the second in command in all of Egypt. And the reason this had to happen was so that God can then save the lives of all the people on the surrounding areas where a great famine was going to strike. So a great famine had stricken all the lands, which caused all the people, all the tribes, all the different surrounding areas to end up in Egypt. Now, what was Egypt in this time and in this place? Egypt was the epicenter of basically the world, the written world as we know it, the biblical world. Egypt was the, if you will, the Americas. It was the place to be. It was the place of safety. It was the land of plenty. It was the land of milk and honey. When all the rest of the world was just tribes here and there, small little packs of people who, by the way, when the famine hit, they were all dying, right? Because they did not have the possessions or the power to maintain life during this major famine. But Egypt, which was this epicenter of the world, had plenty, mainly because of Joseph. So Joseph was there storing up stockpiles of stuff for 7 years, enough to satisfy the needs of not only Egypt, but of anybody who came in. So what happened during the famine is people were starving, and so they ended up in Egypt because they heard Egypt has food. Egypt can keep us alive. So they all came to Egypt. So now Egypt is no longer a place just for Egyptians. Egypt now looks like a giant mesh pot of all different types of tribes, languages, and different types of people. All different types of walks of life are now in Egypt. What kind of place does this remind you of now? Right? Okay, this is what exactly what Egypt was. It was a place with all different kinds of people. And this is where we're going to pick up, because we see at the end of Genesis, the Pharaoh that was fond of Joseph because God was with Joseph and through Joseph saved the lives of all the Egyptians. That Pharaoh is now deceased. Joseph is now deceased. So we are decades later, okay, in Egypt. And what Egypt is now is the place that Joseph and that Pharaoh left behind, which is a giant mesh pot of all different types of cultures, all different types of people. So we're going to pick up in Exodus 1, verse 8. All right, see how this is dealt with. Verse 8, a new king to whom Joseph meant nothing came to power in Egypt. So again, decades later, the old Pharaoh is long gone. Joseph is long gone. This is a brand new Pharaoh, a brand new king. Verse 9, he says to his people, the Israelites have become far too numerous for us. Come, we must deal shrewdly with them, or they will become even more numerous. And if war breaks out, we'll join our enemies, fight against us, and leave the country. So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labor. And they built Pithom and Ramesses as store cities for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter with harsh labor in brick and mortar and with all kinds of work in the fields. In all their harsh labor, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. So what does this look like? The Egyptians, who are the ones in power, the Egyptians, as it's talking about here, would be the government. And they're looking at all of these different walks of life, all these different tribes, all these different people. They're calling them the Israelites, but really it's a mixed multitude of people. And they're saying, look, they're so numerous here in Egypt. They're not exactly like us. How are they not like us? Maybe the color of the skin is a little bit different. Who knows? Maybe their appearances are different, but nonetheless, they're saying they're not like us. We need to deal shrewdly with these people so that they do not take over the Egyptian territory and then one day leave. Now, mind you, the people there in Egypt had no intention of doing that. The Israelites in Egypt weren't there to make war and then leave. They liked Egypt. Egypt was a giant happening place. But in the narcissistic mindset of the Egyptians, they looked out. The government, if you will, looked out and saw these different people, and they said, no. They can demolish this, Egypt, and then leave with all of our stuff. Very narcissistic mindset. Okay, so they looked at the differences. They looked at the differences of personality, of character, of skin color, of whatever. And they said, those people will take what they want and leave. So we need to deal shrewdly with them. So what did they do? They created workforce. They enforced upon these people laborious jobs. This was their initial response to this. Let's create bothersome turmoil work. Let's give these people jobs that will turn them into slaves. And I would imagine that in the beginning, they didn't make it look bad. They didn't approach these people and say, we are going to oppress you, by the way, with work that you're going to hate. And we're going to work you till you're ground and dead. No, they probably made it look really good. Hey, go out, get yourself a job, go get some work, take care of your family. But this is the work that needs to be done. We need you to build houses. We need you to build statues. We need you to build extensions to the city. We need you out on the roads, cleaning and sweeping. Be a part of making Egypt look amazing. But what they were really doing is oppressing them with this really tumultuous labor, unfair, giving them probably very little pay in exchange for the work that they had to do. This is the beginning stages of narcissistic oppression, paying them very little for an extreme amount of work. All right? But what was happening in this situation that we see? As they were more oppressed, these people, the Israelites, or the mixed multitude, as you would have it, over the decades, were continuing to multiply and spread. Something interesting that happens, listen, if people are being worked to death, they're going to have fun with the little money that they have, right? So the Israelites, the mixed multitude, was taking this little money, being worked down to their bones, connecting and meeting up with other people, and the way in which they were having fun, the way in which they were releasing all that was to get married, to multiply, having kids, right? So while the elite, if you will, the Egyptian government was looking at them saying, we are working them to death. How come they're still multiplying? 10 years has gone by and they're just having kids. Well, that's all they could do, you see, is work and then come together and release all of that pain through marriage, through having these relationships, through multiplying. So the Egyptian government then had another idea. Verse 15, the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, the midwives were the ones who would help go around and help the mothers who are having babies. The king said this: when you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it is a girl, let her live. Now, if you think about this, let's just stop right there. How narcissistic is this? What he's basically saying is, it's not, we can use the girls, right? We don't worry about the girl. Let the girls live because if they have an Israelite girl, that's okay. An Egyptian man can put a seed in an Israel girl, and that's all good. But if it's an Israeli child boy or a mixed multitude boy, get rid of it, because that's the type of seed that we don't want to be spread. That's the type of seed that we don't want here anymore. And again, I want to let you know that this is not something that they're going to share with the mixed multitude. Do you think the Egyptian government was going to come out and say, hey, everybody, this is our plan. We are going to actually kill your baby boys, and we're just not going to tell you. When you're pregnant, when you're giving birth, our midwives, which, by the way, was the Egyptian medical people, okay? They're medical profession midwives. You think they went around and said, hey, by the way, if you have a baby boy, we're going to kill him? It was under wraps. The only people and the entities that knew about this was the Egyptian government. It was a plan of the Egyptian king. And how would they roll this out? Probably like this. A baby boy would be born. The midwives would do something to the baby, not telling the mother, and then say, oh, we don't know what happened to the baby. And maybe even make something up. Oh, we've seen a lot of this lately. It's some kind of a disease. It's unfortunate, right? This is what narcissism and oppression looks like. Are you hearing me? This is what they do. They're not going to tell you exactly how things are, what they're doing. They're going to make things happen and give excuses and lie to people's faces about taking other people's lives, about taking babies' lives. And I say this because we think that governments and people in power have everybody's best interests in mind. When narcissism seeps in this world of narcissistic abuse, in this world of narcissism, you can see that it does not. The individual life does not matter in a narcissistic world, to a narcissistic government, to an agenda. There is no, there's no limits. We see that right here. The king, this is back in the ancient days. I mean, how much greater is the oppression today? How much wilder and more elaborate can the tactics used against people to oppress them? How much more unfortunate and sad can it be today? Back then, they didn't have the tools and the chemicals and the things to play around with to mess with people. The king of Egypt had to say, listen, when a baby boy is born, just kill it. Make up some excuse. We don't know. Just kill it. All right? This is ancient stuff. Sounds like something you would hear about today, but no, this is in the beginning of Exodus, friends. One of the first stories of a king, a government that we see. The book of Exodus, a story out of the ancient literature of the Bible. This is an ancient mindset. This narcissism is an ancient, destructive killer of people. We need to understand that. They do not care about babies. They do not care about the lives. They oppress anything that is different. All right? We got to get a hold of this. The king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, when you are helping the Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see the baby as a boy, kill him. If it's a girl, let her live. Now, here's what's interesting about this. In verse 17, this is what gives you hope in humanity and in decency. In verse 17, the midwives, however, feared God. Thankfully, they feared God more than the government. They understood the principles of life more than the government's purpose and agenda. Yes, it's possible that even though we live in a place where governments have agendas and they want to do horrible things, there are, in fact, people that are going to say, no, we're not doing that. Some of us are seeing this even play out today. There's high governments that want to implement certain things. You got to do this and do this is how it's, and there's certain, for example, states, there's certain midwives who fear God and say, we're not going to make people do that. We can see this unfolding, right? This is exactly what the midwives did. They feared God, did not want to do what the king of Egypt had told them to do. We see midwives in direct defiance to the king of Egypt. So being defiant, people in power being defiant of the king is not new either. Sometimes right now we see states giving off the appearance of being defiant to even presidents, right? And that's this, again, this is an ancient way. Here in the book of Exodus, we see midwives being defiant to the king because they feared God. Instead, they feared God more than they feared the king. The king told them to kill the boys, no matter what, but they let the boys live. So over time, the king of Egypt summoned all the midwives and asked them, "Why have you done this? Why have you let the boys live?" The midwives answered Pharaoh, "Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They are vigorous and give birth before the midwives arrive." The midwives lied back to the king. Now then, I want to bring something to your attention here. How many of you look at lying as bad, right? But what we have seen since the ancient days of the book of Genesis all the way till now, we see a history of people lying. Abraham was a liar, was he not? Abraham is also the father of many nations, but Abraham was a liar. How many of you agree? Say amen. Why did Abraham lie? Abraham lied to protect himself, to protect his family. He had to. What did Abraham do? What did Abraham say his wife was when he went into new territory? He said, "That's my sister." Why did Abraham do that in the ancient book? Because he was fearful. What was he afraid of? Because the nature of humanity would have killed him to take his wife, as though she was a piece of property. Abraham knew this. It was instilled in them. So Abraham lied. "It's my sister," in case somebody tried to get the idea, well, let's get rid of Abraham so we can have her. Abraham lied to protect himself. This is an important aspect that we miss. We've been told, you don't ever lie. No. As it looks from the ancient literature, lying is important in certain situations if you want to protect your life. One of the things that you and I need to get used to is if we are going to be dealing with narcissists, if we are going to be dealing with the masters of lies and manipulations in order to oppress you, in order to hurt you, in order to rob from your life, then you better be ready and learn how to lie back. But you're not lying to hurt them. That's the difference. You're not lying to oppress them. Your lies, my lies, are an effort to spare ourselves and our family and those that we care about. That's the difference. Where narcissistic people lie to manipulate and lie to oppress, we must learn to lie to protect. We have to counter lies with lies. And this is what we see the midwives doing here. You see, the king wanted them to lie. The king said, "Kill the baby boys and make up some story as to why the baby boys are dying." The midwives met that king with their own lie. "Listen, we haven't been able to kill the baby boys because the women, the Israeli women, are so strong that they give birth to the boys before we even show up. When we get there, they're already nursing the boys. They already know they have a healthy boy. And if we're to do something, well, then they would know that we killed them. We can't do that." Do you see how they lied there? Because the truth is the midwives were showing up right on time. The midwives were helping these baby boys be delivered, but the midwives wanted nothing to do with the government's plan of killing the babies. Wanted nothing to do with it. The midwives wanted nothing to do with the king's order to kill all these baby boys. So they took it amongst themselves to form their own lie against the government's wishes, against the king's wishes. And so in verse 20, now watch this. Even though they lied to the king, verse 20 says this: "So God was kind to the midwives, and the people increased and became even more numerous. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families of their own." So the midwives, the medical experts, if you will, since they feared God and lied to their own government, lied to their own king to stop its tyrannical, oppressive plan, God blessed them. So for those of you who think that God will not bless you because you are lying to get out of a toxic situation, because you are lying to preserve your life away from narcissistic abuse, because you are lying to protect yourself, if you think God will not bless you, think again. Based on this story, God is not mad at you for lying to protect yourself and other people. God will, however, be mad at you if you are lying to specifically attack and hurt other people, which is what narcissistic people do. A narcissistic person will make up a story about another person and cause flying monkeys and smear campaigns to attack and destroy that person. God hates that because that is oppressing another person with attacking, with all that stuff. That is worldly, selfish, narcissistic dominance. God hates that. But to be the people who make up stories in order to evade the oppression, in order to stay away from the narcissistic abuse, God will bless you. God understands. God was with Abraham when he lied to protect himself and his wife from people who might kill him. Right? God protected and blessed these midwives, these medical experts in Egypt. He blessed them for lying to the king, for lying to the Pharaoh, for lying to the government, saying, we can't kill the baby boys. We know you want us to. We know that you've asked us to kill the baby boys, but we can't do it. We can't. They're too strong. They have babies without us. We can't do it. God said, yes. You lie back to that narcissistic, oppressive government. Don't tell that oppressive government and king what you're up to. You lie back to them. You counter their lie with your lie, and I will bless you. Why? Because you're preserving life. Because you have the heart of God. What matters to you is what matters to God. What matters to the oppressive king, what matters to the Pharaoh, what matters to the government is the control. All they want is to control the population. They want to control the people. They want to control and secure their borders. They have the this is mine mentality. God is not even a question in their mind. They're not worried about anything that belongs to God. It's this is my territory. And this is what we see. Therefore, since they have the it's all my property mentality, they are ready to do whatever it takes to treat people as though they're property, not lives. God is not interested in people and kings and governments treating other people like property. God is interested in lives. And if you have to lie your way into saving lives for God, you will be blessed. This is what we see according to the ancient story of Exodus. So God was kind to the midwives. God was kind to the liars who went against the king, who went against the Pharaoh. God was kind to them. Because you have gone against evil, because you have lied to evil, you have protected many. Your lies protected yourself and many. I will bless you. Don't worry about the king. Don't worry about the Pharaoh. I will bless you. So God was kind to them. But the king, the Pharaoh, the government, if you will, was not done yet. Verse 22. The Pharaoh gave this order to all of his people. He said, fine. Midwives, you medical experts, you're not going to help me out? Watch what I'll do. The Pharaoh gave this order to all of his people. Everybody. I'm going to go around the medical experts now. I'm not messing with you guys. You're not going to listen to me. Here's my order to everybody. Every Hebrew boy from this big down, every Hebrew boy that you come across, every Hebrew boy born must be thrown into the Nile, but let every girl live. So he's gotten even more brazen, saying, fine, if you're not going to help me by killing the babies, we're just going to go and we're going to take all the boys, we're going to round them up, we're going to start dropping them off in the river before they can swim. This is the new order. This is the new order. This shows you the extent of narcissistic oppression, of the lack of care of humanity and of people. Why is this happening again? Is it because there's really not enough room for all these people in Egypt? No. Egypt is huge. Egypt was, again, the blessed place. City upon city upon city upon city existed in Egypt. There was plenty of room. It wasn't about the room. What started out was Pharaoh noticing all the different types of people, and Pharaoh saying, these people are not like us. We need to gain control. It was that spirit of narcissism in Pharaoh saying, we need to control all of these people because they're not like us. Narcissistic abuse, narcissism, cannot deal with differences in people. You either agree with them and you're just like them, or they hate you. You are an enemy. This is how narcissists act. You are either with them or you are an enemy. The Pharaoh saw all these different types of people, Hebrew people, mixed multitudes of people from all different types of tribes saying, we need to get control of this. They don't look like us. They don't act like us. And he made up some weird story about how, they're going to conquer us and then leave. His real mentality is we are the dominant species here. We are the narcissistic one. Let's kill him. And there's nothing that stops that. Once that ball is rolling, anytime something stops the plan, they just get more angry. That's the nature of narcissists. They become more angry, more obsessed with fulfilling their plan. So when one plan doesn't go accordingly, they come up with a different plan, more angry, more abrasive, more, okay, let's do this. Let's just throw them all in the river. Right? It's not until a force greater than the king and the pharaoh, the government, comes into play, wipes them all out. Right? That unspoken force. And make no mistake about it, in history, it happens time and time and time again. Now, we're not there yet. We're not yet at the place where God steps in and destroys Egypt. However, throughout history, we see this play out time and time again. A pharaoh steps in a new territory, says we've got to make this land look the way I want it to look, the way we want it to look. And all that effort and that obsession to destroy people's lives ends up falling on their own heads. Happened in Germany. Happens everywhere. It will be destroyed. It will never last. The narcissistic mentality will never last. It's vain. It's effortless. And we're going to see this as we continue on in the Bible. Narcissism, ladies and gentlemen, narcissism, and it's a vain, effortless life. I mean, fruitless is the right word. It's a vain, fruitless life. It produces nothing good. Nothing good. And we're going to discover this even more in Exodus. With that, we're going to wrap it up, and I'm so grateful and blessed by you all being here this morning. I hope that this message has spoken to your lives as it has spoken to my life, and we will be here next Saturday morning, 9 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time. I'm going to be starting to put videos, just regular videos on this channel as well. I'm going to be producing little shorts and videos that are going to help understand how narcissism is discussed throughout the Bible. So I'm looking forward to doing that. Also, make sure you're keeping up with the Royal We channel. I'm constantly putting new material up there as well. If you would like to be a supporting part of the Royal We, you're welcome to do that through there's PayPal links in the description box and all that. And bless you all. I'm so happy that you're here. Have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Be blessed this next week, and we'll be back next Saturday. All right. Have a blessed weekend, everybody. Bye.